Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, we will travel back in time, not just a little way back, but to the earliest footsteps of humankind. A time before writing, before cities, before monuments or books or songs were passed down. A time when life was simple, but never easy. Close your eyes, if you wish. Allow your breath to slow. And imagine yourself standing at the edge of a wide plain. The sky is vast above you. The air is cool and smells faintly of smoke from a fire that has long since burned down. Somewhere nearby, a group of people, your ancestors, move quietly, shaping their days around the rhythm of the earth. It is in these quiet rhythms of survival that the earliest search for God began, not with words, not with temples, but with feelings of awe, of fear, of wonder at a world that seemed at once full of danger and full of meaning. And so, let us begin. Imagine the first humans living tens of thousands of years ago. Their homes were not built of stone or brick, but often of whatever nature provided. In colder climates, they sought shelter in caves, where the walls were damp and cool, and the echoes of voices carried softly into the darkness. In warmer places, they gathered under simple lean-tos made of branches, hides, and grasses. Their dwellings were temporary, for life required constant movement, always following the herds of animals, always seeking new sources of fruit, roots, and water. When morning came, there was no alarm to wake them, only the faint glow of dawn as it spread across the horizon. The first sounds were the crackling of embers being stirred back to life. A thin thread of smoke curled upward, carrying with it the faint scent of burnt wood, a smell as old as humanity itself. You can imagine them moving slowly, stretching after a night of sleep on furs or woven mats, brushing away insects and stepping carefully on the cool ground. Their clothing was rough, but functional. Hides scraped clean and softened by hours of work, tied together with sinew or plant fibers. Each piece carried the memory of an animal once hunted, now keeping its hunter warm. The day unfolded in small, deliberate tasks. Some went to fetch water, dipping gourds or clay vessels into streams. Others prepared tools, chipping stones into sharp edges, tying points onto wooden shafts. Each tap of stone against stone echoed lightly, a rhythm that repeated day after day, shaping tools that were simple yet effective. Food was always the central concern. Much of the time, survival meant gathering berries, nuts, roots, and herbs. You can imagine the hands of early humans, calloused and strong, moving carefully through the undergrowth, tasting leaves, sniffing roots, learning which plants nourished and which ones harmed. The memory of this knowledge lived not in books, but in experience, passed quietly from one generation to the next. And then, of course, there was the hunt. It was not dramatic, not the way stories later told it. It was patient, quiet, often uncertain. Small animals could be trapped or caught. Larger animals required planning, cooperation, and above all, respect for the dangers they posed. A single mistake could mean injury or death. But when successful, a hunt brought food, clothing, tools, and even ritual meaning. Evening came slowly, the sky dimming, stars beginning to appear. Imagine the fire crackling again, sparks rising into the dark. Around it, people gathered, eating in silence or speaking in low tones. Children listened to the voices of elders, voices carrying stories that explained the world, the animals, the rivers, the storms. At night, when the fire burned low, the sky itself became a vast canvas. Early humans looked upward to the stars scattered across the heavens. They noticed patterns, constellations slowly forming in their imagination. They felt the chill of the night, the fragility of life, the mystery of the distant lights above. It is easy to see how in such a life the search for God began. The roar of thunder felt alive. The sudden strike of lightning seemed like a message. The sun's warmth was not only light, but power. The rhythm of the moon's phases carried both wonder and comfort. These were the first temples. The open sky, the endless earth, the fire at the center of the camp. The rhythm of their days was simple, yet deeply connected to forces beyond their control. And each rustle of leaves, and each howl of a wolf, and each sunrise and sunset, they sensed the presence of something greater than themselves. Something vast, invisible, and powerful. And so, without knowing the word, they had already begun their search for God. As the days of early humans passed, a quiet question began to grow in their minds. They lived close to nature, dependent on it for everything, yet helpless against its forces. The rising of the sun each morning, the cooling of the air at night, the sudden arrival of storms, all of these were beyond their control. You can imagine them sitting around the fire, watching the flames dance, feeling both warmth and fear. Fire gave protection, but also destruction. It was life and it was danger. In such moments, it was natural to wonder, who controlled these forces? Was there something greater behind them? Death, too, played a powerful role in shaping belief. Early humans must have watched as companions grew weak and silent, their breath fading away, their bodies growing still. They buried them carefully, sometimes with stones, sometimes with ochre sprinkled like red dust across the body. Why would they do this unless they believed the dead were not truly gone? Perhaps they thought the spirit moved on or remained close, unseen but present. These burials, gentle and deliberate, mark some of the very first evidence of spiritual thought. Each grave was more than a resting place. It was a whisper of belief, a belief that life continued, somehow, beyond the body. The world around them seemed alive with unseen presence. The rustle of the forest might hold a spirit. The growl of an animal could be more than just sound. It might be a message. The river, flowing endlessly, might carry its own soul. This way of seeing, animism, was one of the earliest forms of belief. Imagine standing in a clearing at dawn. Mist clings to the earth. A group of early humans gathers quietly. One raises a hand toward the rising sun. Another holds a carved bone etched with simple markings. They are not yet priests, not yet worshippers in temples, but they are searching for meaning. They sense power in the world around them, and they seek to understand it. From this search came the first holy figures within their groups, the shamans. These were not rulers nor warriors. They were the dreamers, the ones who listened to the whispers of the unseen. They wore feathers, bones, and paint. They shook rattles, sang softly, and entered trances. Through dreams, herbs, and visions, they spoke of worlds beyond. To their people they gave comfort. They interpreted signs, the flight of birds, the patterns of stars, the shapes in fire and smoke. They healed, or tried to heal, with herbs and chants. They guided the group not only through the forests and plains, but also through the mysteries of existence itself. And slowly, across generations, these small sparks of belief grew. Fire became sacred. The hunt became a ritual. Storms were not accidents, but messages. The moon's gentle phases were seen as symbols of life, death, and rebirth. In this way, the search for God was not sudden. It was a long, quiet unfolding. Each sunrise, each burial, each whisper of wind through the trees added another layer to the unseen world. And so, belief was born.
Close your eyes again and imagine yourself deep inside a cave. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of damp earth and faint smoke from a flickering torch. The walls glisten faintly where water has trickled down for centuries. In the darkness, human hands begin to move. Fingers dipped in ochre and charcoal press against the stone. Slowly, carefully, outlines of animals appear. The curve of a bison's horn, the long legs of a deer, the heavy shape of a mammoth. Each line is deliberate, each mark a connection between the human and the world they lived in. These cave paintings, scattered across the world from Europe to Asia to Africa, are among the earliest sacred symbols. They were not decoration in the way we might think today. Instead, they were likely acts of ritual. To paint the animal was to honor it, to capture its spirit, perhaps to ensure success in the next hunt. The caves were not homes, but sanctuaries, dark, echoing places where the walls themselves seemed alive. Picture the scene. A small group of early humans enters the cave. Their footsteps are soft on the cold stone. Each person carries a torch, its light trembling against the walls. The shaman steps forward, holding a pouch of red ochre powder. With slow movements, he sprinkles it onto the rock, then presses his hand against the surface. When he pulls it away, the mark remains. A handprint. A silent statement that says, "I was here. I exist. I connect with this place." These handprints, left thousands of years ago, still stare back at us today. They are some of the earliest signatures, not of individuals, but of humanity as a whole. Outside of caves, rituals unfolded under the open sky. Imagine a circle of stones arranged carefully, perhaps not by accident, but with meaning. Some align with the sun's rising point at midsummer, or with the longest night of the year. To watch the heavens was to seek order, to see patterns in what first seemed random. The movement of the sun and stars became the rhythm of life, guiding migrations, hunts, and seasons of plenty or hunger. It was during this time, too, that humans began to carve and shape small figurines. The so-called Venus figurines, small statues of women, carved from bone, stone, or ivory, appear again and again across vast regions. Their forms are rounded, with exaggerated features of fertility. Imagine holding such a figurine in your hand. Smooth from polishing, heavy for its size, carefully made. These were not toys. They were symbols. Perhaps they represented a goddess, or the power of life itself. Perhaps they were talismans, carried for luck, or placed in special places as offerings. The world was becoming layered with meaning. A rock was no longer just a rock. It could be a marker, a sacred point. A tree was no longer just a tree. It might house a spirit. Fire was no longer only warmth. It became a bridge to the unseen. As human groups grew larger, rituals became more organized. They danced together, moved in circles, painted their bodies with ashes and ochre, and sang in rhythms that echoed the heartbeat. The pounding of drums made from stretched animal skin filled the air, steady and slow. In those moments, individuals felt part of something greater than themselves. And eventually, these gatherings grew into structures that went beyond simple fires or caves. Imagine the great stone pillars of Göbekli Tepe rising in what is now Turkey more than 11,000 years ago. These were not homes. They were not places for everyday life. They were sacred spaces,
carefully built, decorated with carvings of animals, lions, snakes, vultures, and wild boars. Imagine the effort required. Dozens of people working together to carve and raise massive stones. Such work was not practical. It was spiritual. In those carved pillars, you can sense the earliest architecture of religion. For the first time, belief was no longer hidden in caves or whispered by firelight. It stood openly in towering monuments that gathered people together. These temples may not have been dedicated to a single god, as later religions were, but they reveal a shared longing to connect with powers unseen, to honor the mysteries of life and death. In this way, the symbols of belief became foundations for community. The paintings in caves, the figurines in hands, the stones aligned with the sky, all were steps in the same direction. They were bridges between the human and the divine, between the known and the unknown. And so the rhythm of life deepened. The daily tasks of hunting and gathering were no longer enough. Humans now sought meaning in what lay beyond survival. Through rituals and symbols, they gave shape to their search for God.
As time moved slowly, the world of the early humans began to change. Small bands of families grew into larger groups, drawn together not only by survival, but also by shared stories and unspoken beliefs. Within the flickering firelight, certain figures began to stand apart. Those who seemed more attuned to dreams, to the movement of animals, or to the changing sky. These were the first storytellers, the first shamans, the ones who dared to speak of powers unseen. Around the hearth, patterns began to emerge. Charred bones were arranged carefully, not discarded. Stones were painted with simple marks, spirals, and handprints. These were not mere decorations, but signs, symbols that carried meaning across silence. When storms struck, the group would gather, raising their arms toward the flashing sky. When the hunt was successful, they left part of the meat on a flat rock, an offering to the invisible force that had granted them life. Slowly, the caves themselves became sacred. Deep inside, beyond where daylight reached, early humans painted vast walls with images of animals, bison, deer, mammoth, drawn in red ochre and black charcoal. Each brushstroke was both memory and magic, a way of calling the hunt, of honoring the creatures they depended on. The act of painting was no longer only survival, it was reverence. The rhythm of life began to follow the rhythm of ritual. Birth was marked with chants, death with burial and red earth upon the body. These simple acts, repeated again and again, gave a sense of order to the unknown. Fear was transformed into tradition, and tradition into belief. From the smallest gesture of leaving food at a stone to the grand vision of painting the walls of a cavern, humankind had stepped onto a path that would lead to gods, temples, and civilizations yet to come.
In time, the rituals and symbols of the early people began to do more than connect them to the unseen world. They also bound them to one another. Where once there had been scattered families, now there were tribes, groups with rhythm, memory, and a sense of belonging. The fire became the center of life, a gathering point where decisions were made and roles were given. Not everyone hunted. Some guarded the fire, some gathered roots, berries, and herbs, while others crafted stone tools. Slowly, a structure formed, unspoken but understood. The strong led the hunt, but the wise guided the spirit of the tribe. When disputes arose over food, over shelter, over pride, they did not tear the group apart.
Instead, the tribe turned to figures of respect, the elder who remembered the old ways, or the shaman who claimed to hear the voice of unseen spirits. In their judgment, people found not only order but also reassurance. The tribe learned that survival was not just the strength of one, but the unity of many. Around the fire, stories were told again and again until they became truths. Tales of great animals that once walked the earth. Tales of ancestors who watched from beyond the mountains. Tales of spirits in the wind, fire, and river. These stories carried the lessons of survival, but they also carried something deeper. The first sense of law, the first feeling of belonging to something greater than the self. Soon, signs of hierarchy began to emerge. Leaders of the hunt, keepers of fire, watchers of the sky, guardians of ritual, each with a role, each with a place. For the first time, humanity was not just surviving, but organizing. And in this organization lay the seed of all that would come: kingdoms, laws, and civilizations. The first bonds of society had been tied. Fragile, simple, yet powerful enough to shape the destiny of humankind.
Night after night, the tribe looked upward. Above them stretched a vast canvas filled with countless lights. Some flickered faintly like distant fires, while others blazed with steady brightness. The great pale disk of the moon drifted across the heavens, changing shape each night: a thin crescent, a half circle, then a brilliant round face before shrinking once more. The sun, in turn, vanished and returned, dictating the cycle of sleep, of hunger, of cold and warmth. For early humans, these patterns were not silent phenomena. They were voices. The rising of the sun was life itself, the promise that warmth would return. The fading of the moon meant mysteries, shadows, and hidden forces moving through the night. Stars, constant yet unreachable, were thought of as watchful eyes, guardians of the ancestors. They began to seek connections between their lives and the heavens. A hunt that succeeded under a full moon seemed blessed. A sudden storm, arriving after strange movements of the stars, felt like a warning. Slowly, they spoke of the sky not as empty, but as alive. The sun became a mighty spirit, a giver of fire and strength. The moon became a watchful mother, guarding the night. The stars were countless ancestors, burning fires in the sky to guide the living. Each dawn was a miracle, each sunset a farewell. Around the fire, stories grew into beliefs: that the sun must be honored, that the moon's cycles carried secret power, that the stars told the path of fate. Men and women marked stones with scratches, hoping to follow the rhythm of the moon. Some whispered chants at sunrise, raising their hands to the glowing sky. Thus the first gods were born, not carved from stone or written on tablets, but rising in the imaginations of humankind. They were the first attempts to understand the vastness of existence. In the shining heavens above, early people found both fear and comfort, mystery and meaning. And so the tribe began to live not only by the fire of earth, but also by the fire of the sky.
As generations passed, the tribe's whispers about the sky grew heavier, deeper. The fires above were no longer only lights to admire. They had become forces to honor, spirits to appease. And with reverence came ritual. No longer satisfied with fleeting chants at dawn or stories shared at the hearth, they sought places where the heavens and the earth might meet. The people chose open fields, high ridges, and silent clearings. There, with hands hardened by the hunt, they dragged stones from the earth. Some were small, stacked into crude piles that marked the path of the sun's rising. Others were massive, lifted and set upright, forming circles or lines that seemed to mirror the sky itself. Each stone was more than rock. It was memory, presence, an anchor for the invisible. When the full moon rose, the tribe gathered within these circles. The flames of their torches cast long shadows against the standing stones as chants rolled across the night.
They left offerings, berries, animal bones, carved figurines of wood. Children watched wide-eyed as elders told them that the stones themselves could hear, that the spirits of the sky leaned close to listen. Over time, these places became the heart of the tribe. They were not homes, but sacred grounds. Travelers returned to them season after season, believing the stones held the power of ancestors, the breath of the gods. And within those circles, something profound began. For the first time, humanity had built a space not for survival, but for meaning. These sacred stones were a bridge between earth and sky, between the living and the dead, between fear and wonder. In their shadows, the first sense of a temple was born. Not carved walls or golden altars, but rough stone and open sky, a place where the cosmos touched the earth.
As the fires burned and the stones stood, humans began to weave the world into stories. The sky was no longer only light and dark, it had characters, voices, and moods. The sun became a brave warrior, rising each morning to chase away darkness. The moon was a gentle mother, guiding the night travelers. Stars became ancestors, watching, reminding, whispering guidance to the living. Imagine a cold night, the wind rustling through the grass. Around the fire, a shaman speaks softly. Children lean forward, eyes wide as he tells the story of the first hunt. How the great bison, now painted on the cave walls, was honored with respect, and how the spirits of animals guided hunters safely home. Each story is not hurried. Words roll slowly, echoing against the stones of sacred grounds. Through these myths, humans understood the cycles of life, the rhythm of seasons, and the passage of time. Each narrative carried wisdom, each lesson wrapped in wonder. They taught which plants healed, which animals were revered, and how to honor the spirits in the earth, sky, and water. The act of telling these stories became ritual itself. Around sacred stones, by flickering fires, the tribe listened, remembered, and passed knowledge quietly. Stories became the bridge between generations, the framework of culture, and the first attempt to understand the mysteries of the world. And now, as the fire dims and the shadows grow long, imagine yourself leaving the cave. The stars twinkle faintly above, and the stones of sacred ground stand silently, witnesses to countless dawns and dusks. The wind carries whispers of long-ago chants, the soft memory of hands pressed into ochre and dust. Think of the rhythm of these early lives, the hunt, the gathering, the painting, the telling of stories. A simple existence, yet rich with wonder and meaning. The same moon rises tonight as it did for them. The same stars look down. And in this quiet continuity, there is a strange comfort, a reminder that you are part of a long chain of humans seeking to understand, to belong, and to find the sacred in the everyday. As you rest, remember the fires, the stones, the first myths, and the gentle unfolding of belief. Let the calm of the past soothe your mind. Let the ancient rhythms guide you into sleep, where stories, stars, and whispers from long ago may carry you peacefully through the night.